We all think we know what a car is supposed to look like, but in this video, we're going to ask you to think again. Every car you're about to see has had its appearance modified slightly, some by vandalism, sometimes by design, and some by sheer force of nature. In every case, you'll find yourself asking the same question: what's going on with these cars? The wet, muddy earth is no place to store a 1974 Ferrari Dino G46 GTS. So what was one of the desirable vehicles doing buried in a yard in California, only 4 years after it had been built? Two young boys were playing in the yard of a home they'd recently moved into when they decided to dig up the ground and see what was below it. When they struck metal, they went and found their parents, who helped them unearth the roof of the car. Fearing it could have been an automobile-based tomb, the parents called the authorities, who completed the excavation and traced the owner. The story was even more incredible than the discovery. The owner had bought the car brand new, got into financial difficulty, and hired thieves to steal the car and dump it in the sea so they could claim the insurance. The double-crossing thieves buried it instead, intending to come back for it, but never did. They'd made some attempt to tape up the vents and the seams to prevent damage, but they'd forgotten to close one of the windows, so the interior was badly rotted. The dug-up Ferrari has now been fully restored and frequently stars at classic car shows. Seeing a brand new white Audi TT crudely smeared with pink paint and defaced is enough to make your heart weep if you're a car enthusiast. But if the claims written in the paint are to be believed, the owner of the vehicle may have deserved it. Residents of the normally quiet town of Flackwell Heath in High Wycombe, England, were astonished when they woke up one morning to find the vandalized car parked on their road. In among the many insults that had been scribbled into the paint were "wife beater" and the phrase "you're no man," along with several much ruder expressions which we can't repeat here. For the good of the car, we hope that the paint wasn't too difficult to remove, but we hope that the owner has been given cause to stop and think about the way he conducts his personal affairs. Based on these pictures, we now know for sure that we never want to own a pink Audi. Here's a reminder to all the married men out there: never forget to buy your wife a card for Valentine's Day. Roxanne Hoyle decided to teach her husband Mark the ultimate lesson when he forgot the important date. She plastered his Nissan Qashqai with pictures of her face, along with multiple declarations of his undying love for her. Mark didn't even have the chance to get the stickers off his car before he had to drive away to work, and so all of their neighbors in Hertfordshire, England got to see it. They started taking pictures, and before long, the pictures had gone viral online. Initially, Mark was furious, but as his vehicle has now turned him into a local celebrity, he's learned to see the funny side of it. Mark and Roxanne regularly play pranks on each other on their YouTube channel, but this was a next-level trick. The Nissan Qashqai isn't the most exciting car to look at, so perhaps Mark should be thanking his wife for making it more interesting. Ever wondered how brand new cars make it to showrooms without a single mile on the clock? They've obviously been transported somehow, so how can you do that without it registering as mileage? The answer is easy. They often go by train. Back in the mid-20th century, specialist box cars were devised which could transport multiple cars in the same box at the same time. They were installed into the boxes vertically, like they were hanging pieces of meat. One of the best known was the Vertipack, designed by General Motors and Southern Pacific Railroads working in partnership. Spotting a chance to keep their costs down, GM then developed the Chevy Vega, specifically to fit inside these new Vertipacks comfortably. Up to 30 of the Vegas could be loaded into a Vertipack at once. 15 would be secured to each side of the doors, and the doors would then fold inward to group them all together. By transporting the cars this way, they could be preloaded with all necessary fluids, meaning they could be unloaded and driven away immediately at the other end. It's annoying when your partner keeps asking you for a ride when they're perfectly capable of driving themselves, but we're not sure we'd ever go to the same lengths as Sam Wellman to stop it from happening. When his girlfriend Coral kept insisting that he should drive her everywhere, he had the car taken on the British television show Carjackers for an extreme makeover. Now the humble Seat Leon looks like a giant puppy. Sam had initially bought the car as a gift for her so she could go to and from work without relying on him. Frustratingly, just asked him to drive her to work in the new car instead. Sam intended to make the car look so embarrassing that she would refuse to get into it with him, and it worked. Coral now gets the bus to work every day. But to his surprise, Sam has fallen in love with the modifications. The horn has even been replaced by the sound of a dog barking, which surprises people during a gridlock. His only concern that, as it's now been a year since the fur was fitted, the canine car is becoming something of a shaggy dog. There are many ways to propose marriage to the person you're in love with, and most of them involve getting down on one knee with a big diamond ring in your hand. Australian Nathan Humphries doesn't think like most people. Instead, he decided to completely cover his girlfriend's car with thousands of little yellow post-it notes, upon all of which he'd scrawled the message, "I love you this much." The covering of notes is so thick that we can't even tell you what kind of car this is underneath it all. As if this weren't enough, he sent her a bouquet of flowers at work every hour for 5 hours, spelling out the same message one word at a time. Although Nathan's girlfriend Modra accepted the proposal, she admits that her first thought upon seeing the car was wondering how she would be able to drive it back home. We think that's quite a calm response. If someone wrote the same message on our car thousands of times, we think we'd run away screaming. Christmas decorations feel like they become more competitive each year. There are probably a few people in your neighborhood who are always trying to outdo each other with their festive light show on their rooftops and trees. But giving the Christmas lights treatment to your car is a new idea on us. Brandon Wooden, who lives in Beaufort in South Carolina, must have really been feeling the Christmas spirit when he decided to do this to his vehicle. The car is decked out in hundreds of Christmas lights of the type that would usually be wrapped around a tree. They're secured with sticky packing tape and powered by a converter, which he keeps inside the car. The police noticed him driving around town with the lights, and the first time they stopped him, they just wanted to take a photo. On the second occasion, they issued him with a warning on the grounds that the lights might distract other drivers. Brandon kept the lights on, though, and so on the third time he was stopped, he was fined $232. Brandon's neighbors displayed the true spirit of Christmas by paying the fine for him, and he's now vowed to do the same thing again this December. What do you do with an old car that's no longer suitable to be used on the roads? Sell it for scrap? Why would you do that when it would make a perfectly good ping-pong table? The French artist Benedetto Bufalino has a long history of turning everyday household items into works of art, and his unique outdoor ping-pong table is just the latest in a long line. It's an old, broken-down white sedan car which has been turned upside down, had the roof and windows sliced off, and trimmed down to size. After that, a carefully carved and fitted wooden tabletop has been secured to the underside of the vehicle, designed to fit around the wheels. There's enough space for both singles and doubles games, and it makes a great conversation starter when people come to visit his home. There are worse ways for cars to spend their retirement. It beats rusting away in a forgotten garage somewhere. In the past, he's also turned old cars into jacuzzis and chicken coops. This old Ferrari looks like it might have been pebble-dashed, but it hasn't. It's just been stored in poor condition for more than 40 years in Japan. All Ferraris are precious, but this one is truly one of a kind. It's the only Ferrari 365 GTB 4 Daytona Berlinetta alloy that was ever adapted for use on the road. Ferrari made 120 of the 365 GTB4s between 1963 and 1973. But only 5 of them had a body made from ultralight aluminum. They were built for use in the Daytona Marathon. After the marathon was over, one vehicle was licensed for public roads, and this is that one vehicle. A friend of Enzo Ferrari bought it in 1969 but sold it in 1970, and it was then sold again later the same year. It eventually found its way to Japan during the early 1980s, before staying with the same owner for 40 years, gathering dust and forgotten. Ferrari expert Marcel Massini had to be flown out to Japan to confirm the provenance of the vehicle, and he was happy to do so after a brief examination. Having finally made it out of the garage, the car was headed to auction with an expected price of $1.5 million. If the buyer is willing to spend more money to restore it, that value could double. Here's a phenomenon we're seeing more and more all over the world: cars covered with grass. We've seen reports of grass-covered cars in Russia, in Australia, in the UK, and the USA. The Movil company in Germany have been testing a grass-covered smart car in Stuttgart, with the idea that the grass will suck up carbon dioxide in city centers. Apparently, one small smart car with grass panels on the sides and hood is capable of absorbing the same amount of carbon dioxide as a full-sized tree. Some of the green cars we've seen reports of, for example this Mitsubishi Magna, which was offered for sale on eBay, have been covered with artificial grass. We can only assume that's intended to be a fashion statement. Other vehicles, including one photographed in Rostov, uses real grass. Real grass turf can be attached to a car through a process known as hydro-seeding, and it can achieve some beautiful results as we can see here. But it's recommended that you consult a professional if you're considering having it done to your car. If it's done wrong, you can kiss goodbye to your bodywork. This vintage Aston Martin also has something of a grassy covering, but unlike the cars we've just looked at, this coating of foliage happened by accident. Scandalously, for such a rare and valuable car, this 1960-built Aston Martin DB4 has been left outside in the woods for decades. When the DB4 first rolled off the production line, it was the first production car ever built that could go from 0 to 100 miles per hour in under 30 seconds. This car hasn't traveled a single mile for more than 40 years. A wealthy American imported the car from the United Kingdom during the 1970s, but then abandoned it. When it was eventually found, it was half buried under leaves and suffering from severe rust issues. Despite all the problems with the old car, it was still expected to make $500,000 or more at auction. Whoever got their hands on it had to contractually agree to have a full restoration performed on the car. So hopefully one day soon we'll see new pictures of it looking back to its best. Of all the modifications and alterations we've seen carried out to cars in our video so far, this is the one we'd want the least for our own vehicle. An angry, frustrated husband in Russia took the extreme step of getting revenge on her by filling her car up with concrete, after she changed her last name to win a prize from a local supermarket in St. Petersburg. The man does not wish to be named, but says his marriage was already in difficulty because his wife had been having extramarital relations. Then he found out she had taken on the name of a local store as part of a promotional deal. The shop was willing to pay roughly $900 per month to anybody willing to change their last name to Veni. Ironically, the word translates into English as loyal. That was the final straw for the furious husband, who carried out his revenge on the car because it was his wife's pride and joy. Apparently, she always took the time to ensure that both the exterior and interior were clean and spotless. We think she may have to admit defeat in trying to tidy this little mess up. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, and you will be the first to know when a new video comes out. Thank you for watching, and see you soon.